Okay, all right. After all that talk about science, we're gonna do some fucking. So now I'm gonna teach you guys a constraints-based learning method that we refer to as Fuck Your Jiu-Jitsu. For those of you that haven't heard the term before, it's just a way of describing kind of a mindset. What I'm trying to do is, does everybody here know who Ryan Hall is? You should. If you don't, there's an extra fuck you. Yeah, no, so like I was training at Ryan's gym a long time ago and just observing the way that he trained, and I think that really probably, I mean, maybe the genetic lottery is more important in you becoming really good at jiu-jitsu, but aside from that, it really is your mindset and how you train, because there's not a lot of good training methods out there. The typical training methodology, unfortunately still to this day at most gyms, is random warm-up, random techniques, roll, which means for the majority of people, you're not gonna retain a lot of the information. You're certainly not gonna optimize your growth. So the approach that I believe we should have is, when we're in here, this is the time to experiment with things and try to maximize your development. When we're in here, this is not the time to go to war. Going to war is competition. And so the people that I find have the best rate of development are the people who approach rolling in the gym very much as a source of development. And I'd never seen anybody roll the way that Ryan Hall rolled in the gym, where you could tell he's kind of allowing people to do whatever they wanted and then still trying to figure out ways to beat that, rather than trying to avoid the engagement. And I think there's a lot of that happens. People either approach rolling with the mentality of, I just want to win, or sometimes worse yet, I just don't want to lose. So there's a lot of unwillingness to engage your training partner at disadvantageous, on disadvantageous terms. So the idea behind this, and Ryan gave a speech in class when I was training, he said, you know, if I approach your guard 99 times and you sweep me 99 times, when I approach your guard on the 100th time, I'm gonna approach your guard like I don't give a fuck about your jiu-jitsu. In other words, I'm not scared, I'm not defeated, I'm just gonna keep trying to figure it out. So what I try to do is design a modality for training that allows you to replicate the mentality of someone like Ryan Hall. I think I've succeeded at that. Certainly the results would suggest that I've succeeded at that. How much you engage with the material today on that level of like, let's see what happens, is going to determine how much you get out of it, and is going to determine how much you get out of your training. So the objective here, we're going to use a constraints-based method, which is we're going to put a constraint on one person. That's basically how the Fuck Your Jiu-Jitsu works. It's like, I'm going to let you do whatever you want, and I'm going to try to limit myself as to how many tools or resources I use to respond to what you're doing. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? Okay, Kyle, can I borrow you, buddy? Thank you. So today we're going to discuss Fuck Your Jiu-Jitsu top control. So there are multiple different versions of Fuck Your Jiu-Jitsu. We've got sweeping, we've got passing. Top control, what we're trying to teach you is a skill that, and the idea behind all the Fuck Your Jiu-Jitsu rounds is we're trying to develop skills that are considered a little bit intangible or a little bit difficult to develop. With top control, I think most of you will be pretty familiar with like somebody and holding them in place, and that's mostly how we exert top control. We're trying to pin somebody, we're trying to immobilize them, we're trying to keep them from moving, which is fine and it's good, and there are ways that you can develop that. Not what we're interested in today. What we're interested in today is a version of top control that is quite difficult to develop, which is to say, I want my partner to be able to move just enough that I have a good crack at submitting them. Because if I staple him into the mat and he doesn't move and he doesn't feel like he can escape, he's not going to move, and he's not going to give me his arm, he's not going to give me his neck, his leg, et cetera, et cetera. However, if I just kind of go like this and give him a bunch of space, then he can just like reguard, whatever. Yeah, exactly. Obviously, the more room I give him, the more he can recover. And not only that, some people will be really good at generating recoveries. For instance, if he's got some frames in place here and he bumps me a little bit and he underhooks me, and he starts to build, I'm like, oh crap, and then maybe I fall on a guillotine, and then I go on bottom, and yada yada. So there's a spectrum on one end where I staple him into the mat, he doesn't move at all, and on the other end where he moves as much as he wants to or needs to recover his position, and I lose control. Somewhere along that spectrum, there is the ideal amount of control for me to have, where he feels like he can move enough where he thinks it's to his benefit, whereas it's actually to my benefit, where, for instance, as he gets that underhook and starts to turn in, I'm like, yeah, sucker, you thought you were getting somewhere and now you're getting submitted. So that's what we're gonna be training today, is how do I exert control in such a way where my partner can't go where they want, they can move a little bit, they can try to recover, but I hold them in place in a way that still creates the opportunity for submissions and doesn't require me to pin my partner with my torso. Does that make sense as to what we're developing? Okay, so we're gonna do a bunch of rounds of this. We're gonna do a round, and then I'm gonna give you some feedback, and then we're gonna do another round, and I'm gonna give you some feedback, and so on and so on. So we'll spend most of our time just doing rounds of Fuck Your Jiu-Jitsu top control. So the most important thing is that we all know and understand the rules and what the parameters are, which I'm gonna give you right now. First and most important thing, I am not allowed any contact with this box on this box, all right? So I cannot put my chest on my partner's chest. I cannot put my hips on my partner's hips or torso. I will start with my hands on the mat, basically in side control, and I will try to keep in front of my partner's hips. So if he gets his knee back in like this, even just that much, that's a reguard, we stop and we start again. He won. He can also turn away and go to turtle. As soon as he gets to both knees, he won. We reset and we start again. He can also turn in on an underhook like on a single leg. As soon as he gets to both knees, he won. We start again. My goal is to keep any one of those three things from happening, and the only tools at my disposal are frames, levers, and wedges. All right? So, for instance, get one of those things to happen. Reguard, turn away, turn in. This would be an example of a wedge and lever-based control that I could use, and I have, for the entire 3 minutes. We'll do 6-minute rounds. We'll switch top for bottom halfway through. So one person will be on top for 3 minutes. The other person will be on top for 3 minutes. So we start here, and I can immobilize him however I want. Some examples. If he goes to turn away, I can use this lever to pull him back. If he goes to turn in, I can use this lever to pin him. All right? If I get this sort of thing to happen, I could spend 3 minutes here like this. If he can't get away, good for me. All right? Any wedge, any lever, any frame is absolutely fine. You could, for instance, do this. If you could keep somebody here for the entire 3 minutes. Knee on belly is fine. If I manage, let's say, there's an extreme example. You could keep the position like this for 3 minutes. Anything that involves you using a wedge, a lever, or a frame is totally fine. Yes, Kimura control counts. If you can stay here for 3 minutes, good for you. All right? What you can't do is mount them. You can't pin them with your chest like you would normally do in side control. So we're taking away the most common options that people have for pinning somebody and staying in front of their guard. Any questions on the rules? Yes.
Maybe like what intensity do we want to keep it below?
Okay, this is a very good question, and it's something I wanted to address later on. The words intensity and complexity are very, very important in how we adjust to our training partners. So I can't answer that question directly. What I can give you is kind of what I'm looking for. Depending on your size and experience relative to your training partner, you modulate your intensity or your complexity so that both people are getting a benefit. With this style of, because like, show of hands, who's done anything like this before? Yeah, you guys have a little bit, yeah. So most people have never done a round like this before, which means the majority of people will absolutely suck at it, right? Like we have tons of visiting student program. If you haven't heard, we have a visiting student program at my club. You can come train for free and stay for free for 1 week. So we get dozens of visitors every year, like between 50 and 100 visitors from all over the world every year, including some pretty good black belts. Almost all of them absolutely suck at this game the first time. Like you could have spent 15 years doing jiu-jitsu and never once in your life tried to hold somebody in a dominant position without pinning them and using a crossface and an underhook. So it doesn't matter if you're a black belt. A black belt doesn't confer magical powers. If you don't have the skill of using wedges, levers, and frames to hold someone in place, you don't have it. You're just developing it from scratch. So if you try to substitute complexity, so when I say complexity, I just mean how much skill am I using? How much, like if my partner has no idea how to escape a Kimura control, and I put him in Kimura control and I hold him there for that entire round, am I developing a new skill? Not really. I already know how to do Kimura control. So then I'm just trying to win the round. I'm like, oh, okay, according to these rules, if I use this thing that I'm already good at, I can win the round. Conversely, I could be like 10 times the athlete that my training partner is. And if my intensity level is so high that they just can't keep up with me, I'm going to win the round, but I haven't gained any skill. So what the answer that I'm going to give you is you modulate your level of intensity, so how hard do you go, or your level of complexity, so how much skill level do you use, according to your training partner, so that you are being challenged, right? The point of these rounds is to be put in a situation you haven't been in before, so that you have to use this much more so than this to develop. God, that was measly. Anyway, I want you to try to use this as a learning opportunity. So the idea is play the game, don't try to win the game. Try to create as many opportunities to use different methods of control as possible. Does that help?
Yep.
You look like you're...
So basically with the example that you've given with the Kimura,
Yeah.
you feel like you've got so much control that you can't
Just let it go and go to something else, right? If you're not great at Kimura control and you feel like you're gaining from doing it, definitely do it. But the idea is to use this modality as a growth opportunity, not, like I said, trying to win in training. The people who are the best are the people who care the least about winning in training and care the most about overall skill development.
This is an exercise for the bottom person just as much.
Just as much, yeah. So what you're going to get is an opportunity to practice reguarding, turning in on a single leg, turning away to turtle.
So for a higher level, they're trying, at least in the transition, trying to maintain control.
Absolutely, yeah. So you can move around as much as you like, and that's really what we're trying to achieve here, is your ability to respond to quality escape movements with transitions like windshield wipers, spin behinds, creating good lever control, that kind of stuff. So we'll discuss the specifics of the controls as we go, because we'll just add information. But essentially, I want you to approach this as, this is a game I'm trying to play. I'm trying to get good at the game. I'm not trying to win the game by like shortcutting the process. And that's literally like, when it comes to designing and playing games to get better at jiu-jitsu, that's the most important thing is, are you trying to find a way to break the game so you can win it? Or are you embracing the spirit of the game so that you can actually derive the benefit of improvement? Make sense? So that's turtle. Once she gets to her knees, just reset and start again. Yeah. You can't have your chest on his chest. No contact with this. Yeah. Switch top for bottom, everybody. Switch top for bottom.
That's hard not to, right? Like, put your chest on.
I did really well.
It really makes you think.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, as soon as there's a guard in the way, reset, start again, yeah. Any questions after this round? So yes, the hierarchy is I want as much of a wedge, like a wedge-based control as possible. So frame-based and lever-based controls are very temporary. People can move around those things. First of all, was anybody like, man, really having a hard time escaping, or was it fairly standard to escape a fair bit?
I had a pretty hard time escaping.
Is there a...
He regarded many times.
Yeah.
Maybe not easy,
Okay, so like basically like nobody was just like, fuck, I ate shit for 3 minutes and didn't get out, right? No, because that can happen, and that is almost always happening when there's just a huge skill disparity. And skill disparity just like at the game. Like I said, I've used this example. Like there are black belts who come to my gym and like I'll have competitive roles with them, but if we do this game, I will shit kick them because I play this game a lot and they don't, right? So that's not to disparage anyone. It's just like, you know, if you're somebody who trains in the gi a whole bunch and then we do leg locks, you're gonna have a bad day. It doesn't mean you suck at grappling. It just means you don't have a particular skill set. So as long as there's not like such a huge skill disparity that you're just never escaping, then we've got a good baseline. But yeah, like if you're having a little bit of trouble escaping, I want you to try to consider that you are probably spamming one of the 3 types of escapes way too much. So if your partner is able to, on the first round, hold you quite effectively, it probably means you're either just trying to reguard, or you're just trying to turtle, or you're just trying to wrestle up on the single. The main benefit of this defensively for the person on bottom is that you will learn how to time your transition between the 3 types of escapes for maximum effectiveness. If somebody's doing a good job of not allowing you to turn away, you're gonna be able to turn in. If someone's not doing a good job of restricting your knee from coming in, you'll be able to reguard. So you're looking for the most obvious opening, and then that creates a cycle where your partner is responding better to what you're doing. So in my experience, if I'm just using just frame-based or just lever-based, people can use that approach of like transitioning between the 3 the most effectively. Whereas if I can get, so Kyle, can I borrow you again here, bud? If I can get a really solid wedge, so one of my favorite examples of this is this position, right? Like if I can get this is almost an infinite amount of control, because if he wants to turn away, he can't do it. If he wants to turn in, he can't do it. And if he wants to reguard, he can't do it. So what he has to do is essentially try to like bench press me off of him where my hips get disrupted. So in terms of the hierarchy of control for this style of game, a strong wedge, and obviously a lower body wedge is gonna be more useful than an upper body wedge. You know, I can get a kind of as creative as I want, like, and then if I get like a good combination, like there we go. He is pretty much not gonna go anywhere at this point because I've denied him base. I've got a fairly strong pitting force with my shin, and I've got a pretty strong like internal rotation of the hip with a reinforced wedge where he's not gonna go anywhere. I mean, this is 80% of the way into a pretty deep leg entanglement, so, which is kind of what we're trying to promote, right? Like, we want you to be able to control them enough that they can't leave while moving towards a submission. So whether it's a leg entanglement, an arm entanglement, or going for a choke, you want to have this kind of intermediary control where I'm not pinning them anymore, they can move, but I'm not like going from here and like, doing this kind of crap where I'm almost definitely gonna lose the position, or like, you know, I've got a fairly strong top control and then I'm like, yay, armbar! And then, you know, 80% of the time I lose the position. So we're trying to get you into that space where you can go from the strong pinning force to isolating limbs without ever compromising and diving on something. Does that answer the question? Does that give everyone else a bit of an idea of where we're trying to go with this? Okay, so let's introduce the like kind of the mechanics of wedging. So a wedge is a portable incline plane. It's a doorstop or a crowbar. So wedges either create friction to hold something in place, or they create a like arrow-shaped piercing that you can use to get into spaces. So for today, we're mostly using the doorstop version of the wedge, not so much the crowbar version, but that's basically what we're using wedges for. When it comes to holding something in place, where people tend to go a little bit wrong with wedges is they believe that a wedge is like this kind of action where you're like squeezing your legs together, which, I mean, you can do that, but it's not particularly effective. What we want is opposing forces at a point above and below a certain point. So this is a much better wedge than this, right? Like if I were to go into a leg entanglement and just do this, and Kyle wanted to just pull his knee out, he's gonna leave. But if I go upward pressure here and downward pressure here, and now he wants to leave, and now he wants to leave, he's not going anywhere. So the quality of your wedges is basically 90% of whether or not you're a good leg locker or not. If you don't have good wedges, it doesn't matter how many things you know, you're gonna be a shitty leg locker because their knee will just leave. And the same thing goes for arm bars or upper body control. If I have like a Kimura grip, turn in and hide your elbow. People tend to struggle with this because they're just like, yeah, but what if I, okay, and then now. So they don't understand the wedge mechanism. If I'm at 90 degrees to my partner when I'm doing a Kimura, my wedges are always going to be kind of off. If I'm at 45 degrees, my wedges are going to be better. And as long as I maintain that 45-degree angle, I'm going to be okay. All right? So that's what I want you to focus on in the next round. Whatever you're using for a wedge, which basically your thighs at a point closer to the torso and a point farther from the torso. All right? A point closer to the torso, a point farther from the torso. And then if I can create some control at the end of the lever, especially if I add external or internal rotation to create a bit of a ratchet effect, that's going to be the most powerful way that I can wedge somebody. Any questions on that? So again, sorry?
No questions.
All right. So we're going to focus more on wedges, but we won't always be able to get those wedges. So the other thing we want to focus on is if I'm going to try to exert control via a frame or a lever, I would like my partner's hips facing a different direction than my partner's shoulders. If his hips and shoulders are facing, let's say I pin this down, he turns into me easily because this doesn't prevent the movement. I want to rotate his torso this way. Like this would be a pretty good example of how to control somebody in a scenario like this. It's going to be very difficult for him to turn away in or reguard in any scenario like that. And you can see I've got like backup that I can still use to respond to anything that he's doing. So do your best to get to a strong wedging position. If you can't get to a strong wedging position, do your best to twist your partner's spine so your hips and shoulders are pointed in opposite directions. Nice, good work, guys. Awesome, awesome. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
The rape joke's away a little bit. It looks like he's like a guy that like did like Krav Maga years ago. We have one of those guys.
Oh, switch, guys, switch top or bottom. Thank you. That's a guard. As soon as the legs are in the way, that's a guard. Yeah.
When you're catching a turtle and they start to invert to reguard,
Yeah.
how do you?
Can you show me?
He doesn't even know what he did.
What? So I'm trying to turtle.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's the same thing. You've got to be grabbing the leg, right? Like if you're turning away from me and I'm hooking your leg here like this, that's what's going to allow, like, see, I can create extension to prevent the Granby. Like that's what you're talking about, right? Like if you were to continue to invert now and I allowed your knee to come to your chest, like bring your knee closer, see how that's what pulls you in front of me.
Yeah.
But as long as I can keep this away, even if you continue the inversion, I can just stay in front and just keep that wedge going the whole time. It's the same thing. You just have to create a little bit more extension because, like, obviously the goal in reguarding is just to get the knees back to the chest armpit area. Yeah. So if I can keep that little bit of extension, that's what I want. Cool. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, me.
So the principle, like I teach here as well, is try to control either across the hip or the shoulders or across
or diagonal. Yes. Basically, yeah.
idea?
Yeah. It's just the mechanisms that we're using to do it are ones that we don't normally use. Right? So I would say the optimal form of control is the diagonal, whereas controlling like laterally across the hips and shoulders is not as good. But what we're usually able to do is, like, if I've got a strong enough wedge on one corner, then I can control in a way that you, like, normally I would have to have contact with both of these corners, whereas with a good wedge, if I've got a good enough internal or external rotation, we call this a ratchet lever, right? If I've got a good ratchet lever with a wedge, I can control you from a single corner in a way that people like find disturbingly effective. It's like, why can I not do this? Because if the hip is like turned this way and you can't turn in and you can't turn away, you know, all this freedom of motion with these three corners doesn't matter if this is really immobilized. So that's probably the biggest difference is, like, in the pinning style of control, we either need both shoulders, both hips, or the diagonal. With this style of control, you can get away with just controlling one corner if you do it well enough. Does that make sense? Sorry, you were first. This guy's, your reaction time, dude, is not good. You lost on the dig.
Should have counted it down. Do you find that you are pre-planning, or are you just going by what they feed you? Like, are you like, I'm on this control, if he does X, I'm on that.
Both. So yeah, we can get very deep into that topic, right? Like, are we trying to create automatic reactions to like preset stimuli, or are we trying to, you know, flow with the go, so to speak? There are definitely rounds. And like, I prefer to talk about this at length in like a Q&A format, or if somebody wants to sit down and talk to me, because I don't want you guys to like get cold while I talk about like, what's my mentality, bro, right? Like, yeah, but like, no, but that's a very good question, because I think, again, like, optimized development is so much tied to, like, you know, like, what have I really taught you guys today? Like, put a wedge in, use it. Like, I'm not teaching you a bunch of information, like a bunch of technique. What I'm trying to show you is, here's how you can approach training in a way that will make you better. So the mentality of what I do in any given round, I think has a huge impact on, you know, like, you can have 5 people with roughly the same physicality and roughly the same like access to information, and they'll still get very different results from training, just based on, there's the one guy who will show up and be like, I'm gonna do my A game and practice only, and then there's the person who's like, I will play with whatever. So yeah, like, I think that there are rounds where I'm like, I'm trying to get this reaction so I can do this move. And then there are rounds where I'm like, I'm gonna see what happens. You know, what they give me is what I'm gonna take. So yeah, there's definitely not a prescribed way, it's just, what are you trying to elicit? Yeah.
Can you show the pinning mechanics of the leg and when to do it? I think it's from when people reguard.
Yep. On someone else. Blair, can I borrow you? You're talking about just like the wedge here like this? Yeah. So what I would really like to have anytime, and like the next movement we're gonna do, we're gonna like drill it a little bit before we do the round. But what I would like to do is have the ability to control internal and external rotation as much as possible. And what I really want is to have my rib cage or like lat in front of the knee, and ideally in a way that's like reinforced. So if I can grab my own knee pit, put my hand in front like this, get this kind of thing going where I can stretch the leg away, anything like that is what I'm aiming for.
Just collecting the
Well, so this is what the next thing I want to talk about is like, we're going to be in this position a lot, and people are going to start to try to get this knee in the way. And once they establish that knee position, they've reguarded and yada yada. So this will be something you can use in this game, because like if they get their knee in and then I'm trying to like pass, we don't really want that. But what we want is how to have better lever control without having to put our hands directly on the limbs we're trying to control. So if he's starting to do that, and I can do this, that's kind of my ideal response to anyone getting their knee in. I don't want to commit my hands. I would like to have my hands available for underhooks or grabbing their neck or whatever. So especially as soon as someone's starting to do this kind of thing, there we go. As that knee gets in front of my rib cage, I'm going to take, so he's getting his right leg in my way, my right leg is going to go in, and my shin is going to make contact with the far leg. So we're not going to do a round right now. I'm just going to get you guys to rep this for a few minutes. This leg is in the way. I'm now going to take my shin and just roll it over his thigh. So I'm basically pit stopping back in the leg drag, right? Yes, generally when we're passing, we want forward motion. We don't want to go backwards. But if I have a choice between going backwards into their guard or going backwards into a pretty good leg drag, I would prefer the latter. So particularly if I can really restrict his hip movement, that will help. So if I can, let's rotate around so people can see on this side. So just rep this a few times. My hand, hang on, just rewind. My hand ideally will be strong on the mat by his hip so that when he goes to hip escape, he's gotta go through a narrow space, which means his body has to go into more extension. And then I'm just tracing my shin. I'm live toes with my back foot so I can push off like I'm doing almost a skating stride. And I'm dropping my rib cage over top of his thigh to settle back into a strong wedging position. And then I can use that to go back to this kind of stuff. So that, for me, that's the most common way that I get here, because generally, once somebody puts their knee in, if I start trying to do stuff like this, I'm not stable enough on the balls of my feet to stop them from bridging and exploding and pushing me away. So yeah, the delivery system for this wedge is almost always this. So I just want you guys to spend a few minutes getting to this position strongly with our rib cage over our partner's thigh and our triceps, forearm, whatever, making a strong wedge here. All right? Well, let's get to work, guys. So try to get more. So watch. I'm just going to be here. He's going to get his knee in. And I'm trying to keep his hips in place.
I like how tight you're bringing that.
Yeah. So if he wants to hip escape now, like, see, like, as soon as you do that, you give me the lever, right? Whereas if I just go like this, he doesn't really, yeah. But even like, don't put your foot on the mat. Just hip escape using me as, there you go. See, he can do that. And that's more the issue, because then I can't drive his leg across. It doesn't really work. But if I come in a little bit tighter and I'm here, he can't really reguard. He has to plant his feet on the mat. And that's when I can definitely hit that. There we go, right? There we go, right? That's it, Robin, you got it, yeah. Out of this seminar, it'd be totally worth it. So like, I want to make sure that you really understand this as a discrete movement. So if you want to like plug it into your game, you're not missing any important details. What makes this work so well is the lack of mobility of his far hip. So if he gets his knee in and I do nothing to restrict this, he doesn't even need to hip escape with like this foot on the ground. He can just use me as a base point and move his hips, right? He can also high leg very easily, get his foot on my torso, reset his guard. So what I don't want to do is when this knee comes in, what I'm seeing a lot is I don't want to do this. I certainly don't want to do this, because now I've just created more distance. His hips are going to be more mobile. Yes, I can put some more weight on him. Yes, you can start camping and all that kind of stuff, but whatever. This is, I think, is just a little bit more direct and effective. As he gets his knee in, I just try to connect my thigh to my rib cage. So I'm keeping his ankle like trapped, and I'm trying to connect my knee to my triceps, elbow area, so that I can put some weight on this hand, right? So you gotta try to bring your knee further that way. See how you have to open up to do it? Like, you notice your torso had to move, right? So that's what I want. I want openings. And you notice you had to put your foot on the mat. So like, I'm forced, by doing this, I'm forced, like, he's got his guard back, but it's pretty cosmetic. What I'm seeing a lot in the room is people are now like, Sweet, let me put this hand here and start doing this kind of thing, which isn't necessarily wrong, but you're gonna run into people who are very good at kimuras and have kind of longer arms than you, who when you do this, they're absolutely gonna take it. And I mean, again, it's not the end of the world. You can figure out how to solve the problem, but it's a pretty big problem depending on who you're facing. So we don't ever wanna make this shape if we can help it when someone can access it. What I would like to do is keep this hand entirely free and use my leg and my torso to move around his knee. So if I can keep this hand free, I know I'm doing it right. If I have to use this hand to move their leg, it means I probably screwed it up a little bit. So he starts to get his knee in, I trap him here, and then I just drive my shin over to the floor. And you see how that moved his knee out of my way. I didn't have to push it at all. Somebody would have to be insanely flexible to be able to keep that knee in front of me. But not only that, but wait, there's more. If this knee is in your way, I still don't need to do any of this stuff. Because I've stapled this bottom leg, I can just move around it. I can rotate around, like even if this knee is way far over here, right? Like keep this tight, Blair, don't let me push your leg. Like my hand is not gonna beat his leg here. This doesn't make any sense to do. Even both arms are not gonna beat it, but keep it tight. Doesn't really matter. As long as that is pinned, this can only go so far. And I've got way more range of motion to come back into the leg drag. Sorry, you had a question?
Are you doing like a kickstand with your right leg at all?
My right leg, let me just switch sides. I'm just doing that. And then this foot is tracing my partner's leg. So I'm doing like this sort of thing while keeping this foot and this hand mobile as necessary. Like I put it where I need it for base. I might kickstand his butt to create a little bit of a frame here. I might move it around as I need to shift my torso around. But as long as I've got this pinned and this wedged, I know I'm gonna stay in front of his guard. Does that make a little bit more sense now? Let's get a few more reps in before we do another rep. Yes?
So eventually your goal to keep your ribs above his knees.
Yes.
So on the thigh.
Yes, exactly, yeah. All right, let's get back to work, guys.
It feels much more like encouraging.
Kinda, yeah.
Coming through on that leg drag.
Yeah.
You were kind of flaring that leg out.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it easier to come back up into this shape.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because the issue I was running into, I was coming in like this. So when I was coming back in, I was like this. I didn't have that.
Yes. Yeah, I got you. Yeah. No worries. Yeah, but don't take the hand away. So rewind. Put this hand strong on the mat so his hip can't get away. And now, once you start turning him, now you can just bend your elbow. There you go. Yeah, that's it, yeah. Don't push that arm. Remember, you're never gonna push someone's leg out of the way with your arm. Staple him and just bring your body around the axis. No, why? Keep this knee on the ground. Turn towards me. And now bring your armpit in front of his leg. There you go. That's all you need to do. A little bit about this. This is not gonna work if you are standing, like you're not gonna be able to get to this, especially if there's a bit of a height disparity or a length disparity. So just understand that this is based on the notion that I'm in front of your legs and I've got my hand here. So your hip movement's really restricted, but you're able to frame me enough to get your knee in. Exactly. So you're kind of stuck where you're still mostly on your back. Once he gets way onto his side, this doesn't really work anymore. His hips are too far, and if his knee is down towards the ground, like rotate it, there you go, exactly. It's not gonna work, right? This is a specific circumstance. It's a highly replicable circumstance, right? Like, because if you're passing, you will absolutely end up kind of like this, with this hand trying to block this knee, and this knee definitely getting in. Like if you've grappled, you've been here like a million times. It's like the bane of existence for white belts, right? They get here and like, oh, and then they give up, and then they go back into the guard, right? So this is a position with this knee in that I'm going to be in all the time, and the focus on this leg is what screws you. It's because this is allowing him to stay facing me and turned on his side. What I want to do is when this leg comes in, is basically ignore this leg and focus on that leg. All right, so like, obviously this isn't a passing seminar, but a simple example of this is like, everybody here knows what a Toriando kind of looks like. So for instance, you know, if I'm here, I'm like, yay, Toriando, only he doesn't let me push this knee out of the way, which people tend not to let you. It's pretty hard to have success with it. Even if I start here, I'm like, yay, Toriando, and then he just inverts and we just end up, like, you've had this happen before, right? So a quick suggestion, if I want to Toriando someone, you can just do it that way. It's more effective to focus on this top leg as a lever to rotate our partner's hips away than it is to focus on the close leg and trying to like separate the knee-elbow connection against good grapplers because they just don't allow you into this space. Way, way more grapplers will do a good job of keeping you out of this space than will do a good job of keeping you out of this space. So if you base your passing on like, I'm gonna try to control this space, it's not likely to be all that successful. If you base your passing or your control more like, I'm gonna get this space, it's way, way more reliable. All right, so you'll get here all the damn time. And then you'll get here pretty reliably, which means you can then get here just about as reliably. So during this next round, when we're starting on our knees with our hands here, if our partner gets their knee in, that's totally cool. See how much mileage you get out of this movement. If your partner, like during all these movements, gets their knee back in, same thing. Try to get your hand to this corner. Try to use this as a reset, but still keep focusing on all the other stuff. Keep good wedges, good frames, spin around like windshield wiper, anything when when their legs are starting to come back in. Any questions? All right, let's do another round. Clap if you want, I don't care. That probably means you didn't do a good enough job of putting your right hand on the mat. So like go back to the start point, put your right hand on the mat, he gets his knee in, keep your weight heavy on your right hand, keep your armpit in front of his knee, step your, you notice you're already lifting your left knee, don't do that, stay low, step your right foot in, keep your knee at your triceps, right? And so now also try to put your foot on his hip or do that thing. So he's still able to do it, yeah? Take your right elbow and focus on driving it down against his thigh. You notice how that gets rid of it? Yeah. There you go. So the act of having this hand here and doing this enables you to now use this to access that bottom leg as a lever. So if this hand comes away at any point, which it was still a lot of the time for you, you're losing the option of controlling that far leg in any way other than with your shin, which depending on how good you are with your shin, it could still be okay, but like, the joke I always use is 2 things are better than 1, don't tell your wife. You know, like, it's better to have 2 points of control than 1 point of control. So that's all, we're relinquishing that a little bit. Any other questions, guys? Okay.
I find myself at the bottom looking for very weird ways to off-balance the person that I just don't normally, I hadn't really looked at before.
That's more of a comment than a question, but
this has been awesome.
Oh, okay, cool. That's also a comment, but I love it. So, no, and that is like seriously like part of the reason I teach this way is because it makes you consider movement patterns you would never consider otherwise. You would just do the 2 or 3 things that you know how to do, and like I said, the ratio of like exploration to growth versus solidifying what you're good at to growth, it's really tilted in favor of exploration. So that's what we're trying to get you to do is just explore different ways of moving. Was everybody kind of roughly able to get to this spot and reset, like stay in front of the knees? This was working. What would you say was the most common, sorry, before we move on to this, I'm gonna hit you with the term cognitive load. If you have already heard about this, you probably can start ignoring me already. But if you haven't heard what cognitive load is how much stuff can you fit in your brain. Cognitive load, low or high, does not mean that you are dumb or smart. What it is completely related to is how much information that I'm giving you did you already have when you walked in here. So if you've already done Fuck Your Jiu-Jitsu before, you kind of know these rules, that's some shit you didn't have to memorize. If you already have done leg drags a whole bunch, there are details here that you're not gonna have to worry about. If you're pretty proficient with wedges, like whatever you walked in here with is much more determining of your cognitive load than your actual intelligence. So what I recommend highly, if you are at all in tune with your own learning process, is when you feel like you're reaching a point of cognitive load where you're like, all right, that's it, I'm full, I'm not gonna take in any more information like usefully today, start tuning me out, right? Like I've really only shown a couple of things today, and by the way, you can tune me out for any reason. I ramble, so it's okay. Yeah, but like the worst thing you can do when you show up to something like this is like, I'm gonna try to remember every goddamn thing this guy shows, and then you get home, you're like, fuck. Now I remember none of the things because I tried to remember 10. So I try to keep the actual amount of information I give fairly minimal. Like, what did I actually show you today other than pick up a leg, pick up an arm, make a wedge? I showed you a detail for how to go back to the leg drag. I've actually taught one actual technique so far today. So I would never show up and show you like 10 moves because you would just forget them all. So wherever you are in your cognitive load at this point in the day, if anything else I'm starting to add beyond this is like, I don't know if I'm gonna use that, feel free to just keep working on what we've showed so far. And when we go to do another round, feel free to just focus on those things. Don't feel like you have to try to get every part of this. That's not how learning works. So just like be aware of that. I won't be offended if I come around and you're still working on a thing from before. I don't care. I want you to get as much out of today. We're on board with cognitive load? All right, cool. Okay, so would you say that the most common thing right now with what we're doing is people putting their hands on your knees and kind of pushing at some point, right? Like that's basically what's happening. Okay, Kyle, let me get you back in here, bud. All right. So whether it's because I went here and he put his hand on my knee, or I went in here and he put his hand on my knee, we're getting people to extend their arms, which is generally a bad idea. We don't really want to make this shape, not always, right? Like it's like if I ask you, is an underhook good or bad? The answer is the same as like, I got to go out for the night, but I'm pissing too much. Depends, right? Anyway, so the idea is if he's extending his limb at a time where I can get inside of this space, or let's say he catches me with an underhook and he starts to come up, where I can get inside of this space, it's probably not good that he's extending his limb. If he's extending it at a time when I can't exploit it, then it's perfectly fine for him to do it, right? Like if he comes up on if you turn away and do like a collar tie escape, yeah, this is totally fine. I can't do anything with that. So extending his arm at that point was perfectly fine. Generally speaking, when we're on bottom and somebody is past our hip line, or even in a scenario like this, starting to push is a bad idea. How can we exploit that? Let's just, can I get you guys just to come in a little bit closer, and by that I mean a lot closer, and pretty much on this side would be better. So again, whether it's here or here, and this hand is doing something like this, yeah, like this is basically starting to happen. For the next round, I want you to try to exploit this reaction. So let's say it's here and he does that. There are a couple of ways we can go about this. What I would recommend is cupping the triceps and putting your elbow on your partner's torso to start to get a good control while keeping your shoulder in front. Whether you want to turn this into a kimura, a spinning arm bar, like any kind of lever control, all of that is good. But if I'm not doing a good job of cupping the triceps and driving my elbow down into his sternum while bringing my shoulder close to his wrist, I won't have the optimal lever control. Right now I've got pretty good, like you feel like I'm internally rotating your shoulder, right?
I'm more concerned about my solar plex.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Right now you feel like I'm internally, this is a bonus. If you can place your elbow in their solar plexus, you won't always be able to, so that's not like a detail of the technique that's a requirement. That's just how I try to do it, so sorry about that. Rib cage, like whatever, counter pressure with my hand pulling to me and my shoulder pulling to here is what I'm looking for. If I just, let's say I'm in here and it's kind of the same thing. He puts his hand on my knee, yeah, exactly, and I go to do this. As long as I've got these 3 points, I've got good control. If I just go underhook and he takes a tight overhook now, This is what I mean. It's like, is an underhook good or bad? Well, in this case, it's actually bad. Because he already has his leg in the way, and I don't have the means to close the distance, it's not good. If my knee was in front and he did that, and I went like this, then the underhook would be just fine, provided I pin his shoulder with my chest. But if I just keep the underhook here and he starts to move away, then the underhook is bad, right? So underhooks aren't good or bad, overhooks aren't good or bad. Lever access and lever control is what we want. So whether my knee is in front or my knee is in back, my partner's hand goes to here, I want to try to bring my shoulder to my partner's wrist, and my elbow to my partner's torso, and my partner's elbow towards me. And then just use this as a method of control to get yourself somewhere you want to be. Any questions on that? All right, we're going to do another round. Focus on that as a response to people putting their hands on your knees. All right, let's get to it, guys. Time is running. Go ahead and clap. You can count too if you like. Can't really need to do anything with it. Like right now, he's not a threat to turn in, so come back. If he starts to turn in a little bit, you see how now that starts to become an effective tool. So that's the only time you need to do it.
So I only have to have it here. I don't like need to look for this, or like I'm just getting.
Just pull that to you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There you go. Yeah, you got it. Yeah. So if he's not turning into you, you don't need to do it. Yeah, but you got to put your hand on his knee, because otherwise, how is he supposed to grab the underhook if you're not putting your hand on his? It's a response to you doing that. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Keep your elbow on his torso. There you go. I mean, it's not great that you're up right now. You should be down. Yeah, there we go. That's it. Yeah, yeah. You're here, and I just do that. This isn't relevant to him maintaining control. If I start going like that, it's relevant to him maintaining control. Does that make sense? So well, he has to be trying to get out. So if you go to knee on belly, and I'm just like, I put my hand on your knee, but you're not gonna get the underhook now. Well, cool, I'm also not gonna get out. So, but if I'm like, yeah, then does that make a little more sense? So what we're trying to respond to is somebody putting their hands on your knee in a way where they can then do that, right? So we don't want to rely on people to do like a silly thing where they expose their elbow unnecessarily, but people will put their hands here like this, and then they'll go like that, and then there'll be a momentary opening where you can do that. That's what we're trying to arrive at here, is there will be a coming to face kind of frame where normally getting an underhook would be very difficult, right? Like if we switched top for bottom, let's say, for example, let's say I'm in a knee cut, and he's framing me, right? Like get your knee in the way. No, get your knee in the way. Yeah, there we go, yeah. You guys have been here before, I'm sure. You're trying to knee cut, you're like, why can't I fucking underhook this guy? Man, this is really annoying, right? And you could potentially do this. I don't know if you guys have seen that before. Andrew Wiltsey is the first place I saw it, so I call it like a Wiltsey underhook. Some people call it a Rao drag after Jason Rao. But the objective is just when he's pushing me, I disconnect, which creates a lever effect. I cup the triceps, I stick my elbow in front. And now I have a very effective underhook, because as I continue to move, I've pierced this knee-elbow connection. And so whatever happens now, he is not gonna get his legs back in front of me. Whereas if I underhook him and I go like this, when I move like this, there's still a potential that his knee-elbow connection is maintained. He gets the bottom knee in, he gets that leg, like he can frame me out. There's potential for recovery. Does that kind of make sense? So that's all we're doing here, is we're going into a circumstance where he's staying really disciplined with his hand position. He's not going like that to give me like an easy underhook. There you go. He's doing that. He's putting his hand on my knee and he's hip escaping. And this is how you can get into a strong underhook position on somebody at this angle. Because if I wanted to just like, put your hand on my knee and push a little bit. You know, like I can't get an underhook the normal way from here. But if I turn my hand up and I put my shoulder here and I pull, I can still get an underhook. Does that context make a little more sense now? So that's all we're doing. We're trying to recognize that when we're in these control positions, people will put their hands on our knees and they will push like this, which gives just enough space for this style of underhook, but not enough space for more of a like diving your arm into their armpit with your biceps and shoulder kind of underhook. So this is just a layer of control we can add when we're doing this. You look like you got a question brewing.
I'm just noticing some people when they don't know what to do. Maybe you can just show people like what.
Yeah, so that's kind of like where we can get to now. Again, provided your cognitive load permits you to do this. What I'm going to show you, and this will be the last like technique I'll show. So just go on bottom for a second. Okay, so if I have this style of underhook where I usually just call it a shallow underhook at this point. So like deep underhook is with elbow in, shallow underhook is with elbow out or elbow in front. This is a means of prying the elbow away from my partner's body. So this is one of the most reliable ways to switch to Kimura control. This is one of the more reliable ways to get someone to feel like they might, or it might be a good idea to come up. Like he starts coming up towards me, to stepping over and hitting mounted triangles, omoplatas, things like that. Additionally, that kind of far side arm bar. So any of those things, anything that involves flaring the elbow from the body, omoplata, triangle, kimura, far side arm bar is where you would go with this. Not really the point of today, like teaching like submission related stuff, but having said that, the last round we're gonna change the rules. So everything's the same, only now I as the top player, I'm allowed to go for submissions. All right? So I can go for kimuras, I can go for arm bars, I can go for leg locks, I can go for all that kind of stuff. All right? I can also take the back with hooks in if I do it cleanly off of their turtle. So if he turns away and goes to turtle and then he was like, and I didn't get anything, I'm here, I can't chase the back, I can't try to get the back at this point. But if, as he turns away, I shoot the low hook and just take the back, then I can take the back. Does that make sense? So if I can, and same thing goes with the submissions, right? Like if I can hit a clean entry to something, you don't even have to finish the submission, right? It can just be, he got his underhook and he turned into me. Cool. This was going to lead to a submission. I don't need to like spend 5 or 10 seconds fishing for something. I just got to a submission threat, right? I don't, if I get this, I can just like, good enough. We don't need to have the battle of extending the arm. That can just be a topic for another day, right? So whatever entry we want, go ahead and use it. So chokes, arm bars, if you want to move into the legs, go ahead. But again, it has to be a clean entry off of one of these defensive reactions that we've been learning to slow down or move around. If it has to go after they've done it, reset and start again. So like for instance, if I get my knee in and he wants to leg entangle me, but I like get to here, he can't keep going and try to entangle my legs at this point because now we're just playing guard. Does that make sense, guys? All right, so one more round. We've got some context for this underhook. We've got this moving back into the leg drag, which is really good for setting a few things up. It sets up leg entanglements really well. It also sets up, for those of you that aren't super aware of this, I'll just give you a couple of hints. When I get here, a lot of either very greedy or very stupid people reach under the leg and try to pull it through, or reach over and under the leg and try to pull it through and get to a leg entanglement. This is, yeah, go ahead. This is effectively suicide, but people still do it. So just something to watch for. This is like, that's a sign of a not so great leg locker most of the time, or like a leg lock or bust kind of person. When you get here, people will post their hands on you quite a bit. This kind of, you said it was gonna stay on. You can, yeah. You can disconnect and redirect and start attacking the arms. You can disconnect back into arm triangles. This creates a lot of opportunities because arms will be in places they probably shouldn't be because people are freaking out trying to push on you. So you use that. Obviously, if we've got good wedges, You know, if we're getting to a spot like this, trying to hold someone, we want to just take an arm bar, absolutely, go right ahead and do it. Any questions on that, guys?
Maybe one. What is the person supposed to do in this position here once you hit the knee?
The person on bottom?
Yeah.
What are they supposed to do?
Yeah.
It depends.
At least one or two things.
Okay, so what I want is a frame that has minimum extension. So if I'm extending my limbs like this, this is bad. But if I'm staying as compact as possible and trying to get myself to here, that would be the best answer for this position. All right, so a short range frame that allows me to feed my leg to my hand in a way, and this doesn't require flexibility. I'm very not flexible in this direction. I'm just creating a reinforced frame, right? Pressure into me. I'm cheating because you're like half my size. Can I get someone closer to my size? So if I'm able to have a strong frame here and can start to funnel this to here, pressure into me. Like I'm not, this doesn't require, you can see like I'm not putting my leg behind my head. I'm just reinforcing the frame. Keep going. And then I can start to reguard. So this is the best answer that I know, is to take this, feed it to here, and create a scaffold that then allows me to reset my hip angle. Does that help? All right, let's do one more round of this. Like I said, we're adding in submissions, but only off of the movements. All right, let's get to it, guys.
Out of here by 4, but it was really a pleasure to see you again, sir.
Likewise,
thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming.
thank you.
Appreciate
I love
it.
that part. I just have one quick question.
Shoot, yeah, of course, please, please.
So we were doing this here,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
the only thing I found was that she could easily just push me over, and she'd just push me, or yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how to like stay up here.
So I mean, the first answer is if your weight is too far back in your hips, that's why.
Okay.
So I want you to bring your weight a little bit more forward. There you go. Yeah, and you can put your hands on the mat if you need to.
Oh, you can.
Now try to move her. There you go.
Oh, okay.
So like, you notice she can bridge and push, but she's not going to dislodge you. She's only going to extend her body.
Like how her just kind of grabbed me and pushed me over that way, because I really like this position here.
Yeah.
It's just like I can just come here and then I can go up here, or
Yeah, exactly. It's just like with anything, it's weight distribution.
Okay.
So if your weight is too far back, you're easy to push.
Okay.
Right?
So coming forward here is.
Yeah, but you could also come forward with your right foot.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Ah.
Yeah. You could just bend your right knee towards the mat more.
So here.
No, like this way, in through here.
Here.
Yeah, try to drive your knee between her legs.
So.
Don't worry about your hands. Don't worry about your hands. Just take your right knee and drive it through here more. No, you're driving it down. I want you to drive it this way. Like bring your knee to my hand.
This one.
This one.
Okay. Here.
There you go. And put more weight forward now on this knee. So now start pushing on her.
Oh, okay.
So it's just they're just subtle. Like
Okay.
if you're in like a squat, anything that pushes you backwards is going to be very effective, right? So you want to have your weight tilted more into your knees and less into your heels.
Ah, okay, because I saw your foot flat here and your toes on the left.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if I come up on my toes here then?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay,
No.
see, that's why I was feeling confused.
Yeah.
I thought I had to keep this foot flat.
No.
okay,
If you try to replicate precisely what I'm doing,
Yeah.
I'm just demonstrating an idea.
I just assumed
yeah.
that the bottom had to.
No,
Oh, sorry.
it doesn't have to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just assumed that had to be fine. So I
No.
can just come in here and.
Yeah,
aid
just
you.
shift your weight. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. That's amazing.
No worries.
Thank you so much, eh?
Thank you.
Real
My
pleasure.
pleasure. Got it. Take care.
No, you were there. I'm really into.
Sweet, man. Good.
Switch, guys. Switch top or bottom. Okay, so that's as much like material, like let's say planned material, as I want to present. Are we still rolling after this, or?
We're doing an open mat, but yeah,
Okay.
like,
Okay.
If you're okay with that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So.
Maybe general Q&A.
Yeah, so basically Q&A I'm happy to do related to this or just anything in general. And then, if I'm like, I'll get some rolls in, but if I'm just sitting around and not rolling, please feel free. That's like, I will answer any question about any jiu-jitsu thing.
Can you show a technique? If I ask about the choke.
Oh, yeah, I mean.
I really want to see it in person.
Did you see it or feel it?
I'll feel it, and then I'll want to see it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the Roadhouse choke. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
On my shoulder.
Yeah, there won't be any pressure on your shoulder. So the key to this is if I can't get arm isolation, because what I would like to do is pin this bicep. Is this okay for your shoulder?
Here is fine. Yeah.
Yeah, and trap this arm. So this is a position that I get to in a variety of ways, and then I'll just apply pressure from there. But it can be done from like almost anywhere as a threat to draw arms. So like where people misunderstand this is they're like, it's a choke. Well, I could easily defend that. Like, yeah, you can very easily at the cost of your elbow position. So probably the best example of this is from the mount. When I get into here and people have to bring their arms up like this and expose their elbow, right? What people will also do is they'll turn super hard to that side and expose their back. And I know that seems like, oh yeah, I wouldn't do that. I guarantee you would, because very, very good people have done that, both in competition and in training, because they're surprised by how effective the choke pressure is from here. So as long as my arm is not straight, this isn't great, because just push on my elbow even, like push on my wrist, elbow, like anything. But if I get here, you notice like if you go to move my arm now, it's pretty damn difficult. And that's the key to this, is just having my elbow or my forearm at like as close to a 90-degree angle, as high up towards the top of the neck as possible. So like I don't want to be below the windpipe. I ideally would like to be above the windpipe. And I have my weight over top like this, where I can reinforce it with my leg, my hip, my arm. Like there's any number of ways that I can reinforce my elbow. But if you can interfere with my arm enough to relieve the pressure, that's the only way to do it, is to put your elbow into that space. So for every Roadhouse choke I get 8 arm bars and 10 back takes. Like I don't really care if I choke you or not. I just know you're gonna overreact, because the first reaction is, this is bullshit, I don't have to do anything. And then the next reaction is, oh god damn it, I'm not getting caught with that twice. And so that's when you see big overreactions and extensions of elbow position, because it's literally like once I get this, that's the only way to defend it. You have to extend your elbow into this space, and then I can start to rotate around you. So that's the main, like.
Would you be able to do it from half guard?
You can, it depends on the situation. So in half guard, if I'm in front of your knees and I can get here,
Yeah, because
I can do it.
Yeah, I saw you doing something like that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of places you can, like anywhere that I can reach your neck where you can't bump me enough or get into this space, I can do it.
You think that grip is effective just to keep your shoulders to the mat?
Oh yeah, it's like, I mean, you can use it like, you could use it from here. It's just, it's like, it creates extension. Yeah, like put it this way, I haven't discovered the limits of the utility of this yet, right? Because for me, this started as, I'm training with just one arm, how can I still submit people? And it was basically like clowning folks. And then it became, oh, this is effective in certain places. And then it just became effective in more and more places. So I still haven't explored this in the context of being in someone's guard very much. I've used it almost exclusively when I'm in offensive dominant positions. So we'll see. Yes?
Just to be clear, because I got a couple of newish people here.
Sure.
You are not closing.
Yeah, okay, so again, like the main, like from a sales perspective, the main objection you're overcoming with this is it's illegal, and that's not true. So across pretty much any rule set, you are not allowed to squeeze the windpipe or the neck. So as long as you are not making this, which by the way also doesn't work. Like if you grab someone's neck and try to squeeze, it doesn't do anything. It's actually the worst technique. What we're trying to do is take this joint of my thumb and this joint of my hand and just put straight downward pressure on. This is literally the same thing as a rear naked choke. It's pressure directly on the internal and external carotid arteries in the sternocleidomastoid muscle. It's just done with a different grip that doesn't look that great, if we're honest, right? But I'm not sitting there like doing this. It's just creating a post and then putting weight on the elbow. So like, you know, throat post choke would be the most like neutral kind of biomechanical term. But
I felt it more on the side there.
yeah, there's not a ton of windpipe pressure. Eventually, the web of your hand, as you keep pressing down, the web of your hand will start to pressure the windpipe, much the same way that your forearm will start to pressure the windpipe in a guillotine. So there's an associated discomfort similar to a guillotine. But yeah, under no circumstances should you be gripping the windpipe or even the side, like anything that makes like a claw shape is wrong. It's pressure straight down like that. Yeah. Does that? Sorry? Have you not seen the movie Roadhouse? Which one? The actual good one. You go watch it. Yeah. It's the guy rips the guy's throat out during a fight. So it's just kind of a yeah.
Can you show that one?
Give the camera.
Just press the red button.
Because you were pretty close to this.
Yeah.
It's almost like covered up. I could see a referee going like.
So I don't disagree. I would say that for most people, there's in an IBJJF event. Okay, here's my official position. If you're not Brazilian and you enter an IBJJF event and your opponent is Brazilian, I would say this is probably not the best idea. But I would say in any other competition circumstance, you're totally fine. I've used it. Obviously, it was in a sub-only match. There was no issue there. We've had a couple of my students do it in competition. No issues there. It is legal. For me, there's no downside because if I go do it in a match and I get DQ'd, I'll just get more famous for it. So I don't care. Like I literally don't care if I get DQ'd because then I get to make a social media post about it and sell more instructionals. Like I don't give a shit. But yeah, if you want to be a little bit more, like controversy is better, right? Like which is stupid. It's a failing testament to the world we live in, but that's the case. So for anybody else, I would say, you know, just that's the one circumstance where probably don't do it. But it's very obvious, and I've had refs ask me, I'm like, can you legit not tell when someone's doing this? Because you can. Like it is super obvious when someone does this versus when someone's just posting on the neck. So I don't think any ref could make the argument of like, I didn't know. It's just gonna be IBJJF refs who want to fuck you, but they can fuck you any number of ways. You don't have to do this for them to fuck you over. Does that help? Yeah. Any other questions, guys?
Would it be something that you would like mention to the ref, like I'm not squeezing, like I'm not can't talk to the ref.
You can't talk to the ref. You can't talk to the, well, in IBJJF, you can't talk to the ref.
Can't talk to your coach.
In 80, yeah, exactly.
I'm not squeezing.
And that's the way, that is legit the way around. You're like, coach, can you let the ref know that I'm not squeezing the windpipe, please? Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, there's stupid ways of getting around it. Yeah. Any other questions, guys? Yes, Kieran. I'll be
So what about the 2-on-1 version?
Yeah.
Your head posted on the mat above?
Yeah. Don't do this because your thumbs are on the windpipe. Don't do that. Yeah, and honestly, I don't think it works that well. It's this that works so well because you've got posts on either side of the windpipe that cover the artery. So what I do is I reinforce like this. I go around the back of the head and I grab my own wrist. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yes, sorry. Yeah.
You're showing stuff ecological approach.
Eh,
I was gonna ask about like which did you manage to work like as a technique? What is your consideration to determine like this is gonna be like a technique?
Oh yeah. So guys, so for anyone that's interested in coaching, this is actually a really, really good question. Yeah. This is like basically what do you show with like gameplay and exploration, quote unquote ecological, and what do you show as like this is a technique, do it this way? And the simplest way to answer that is the more chaotic a situation is, the more you use a game, the more systematic. So the more linear something is, like, you know, if I want to get you to, like, can I grab your back here for a second? Like if I want to teach you how to get to like the arm trap from the back here, then that's pretty like linear and systematic, right? It's like I'm gonna get here, I'm gonna do a hand fighting sequence, I'm gonna trap like that. Like there aren't a bunch of variables there. It's more just I need you to do this exact thing. Whereas if it's like, okay, a certain guard passing thing, there's a bunch of different variables, then I would try to do it with more gameplay. And then if a specific thing is happening where I see, okay, they could just use this approach, then I'll kind of like what I did today. I was like, okay, there's one thing that I'm seeing that if I show it to you like exactly like this, will probably make a big difference. And if I tried to create parameters to get you to figure it out, it would just be really time consuming. So I'll just show you this one thing. Like if I can show you a grip, like put your hand exactly here, and it might take you 2 years to discover that on your own. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So you pretty much kind of like balancing between both of them.
Hugely.
Like, we're just doing ecological or
No, I mean, can you turn the camera off? No,